purpose of this video is to showcase all my favorite lines from the works I've audio read on this channel so far. I forwent quoting anything from the works I wrote. Featuring anything like that is just vain to me. Broadly speaking, I picked out quotes that were either extremely well written, or entertaining, or effective, or insightful in some way. However, I put a restriction on what may terribly spoil the action or course of the stories. However, this is not to say that this video does not contain lines better left in context, if you want to get the full meaning or expressiveness of the quotes. While the quotes were obviously subjectively selected, the number of quotes featured from each particular story is not necessarily indicative of my opinions about the works themselves. I will not feature any quotes from my Edgar Allan Poe reading because I basically put the entire poem and feature it, and that's not the purpose of this video. Similarly, drifting only appears here once because the writing is extremely abstract, which is definitely not to say that it is not worth featuring. It's just not full of quotable lines. Regarding the disparities that did occur, note well that often the case is that the really quotable stuff is well mixed in with the context. Hence, I didn't incorporate some noteworthy lines. This fact can show just how talented these authors are. Additionally, I did my best to refrain from featuring passages that I simply felt I voiced well. This video is meant to showcase parts that I felt the authors wrote with extreme eloquence. I also tried to avoid openers meant to draw you in at the beginning of a story, and kickers that are meant to make you think at the end of the story. In my mind, I'd be spoiling the stories by giving the kickers. The Disconcerting Descriptions group is meant to house any descriptions that paint unsettling images or are simply really effective descriptive passages. The quotes from the Profundities group often stand alone. However, there are some lines that seemed simply brilliant to me in the context in which they were written, and I include them here without context because they wouldn't just be lines if I explained the meaning. This was a sort of catch-all for lines and exchanges that didn't fit into a single category, and this is also where I put all the dark quotes about depression and suicide too, although most of them don't concern that. A lot of them concern human nature or society, or are just pithy or highly interesting. The quotes from the creepy, haunting group are mostly the sort of lines found generally in horror stories that make you think something similar could happen to you, or lines that lend toward dispelling your sense of disbelief through giving a relatable exchange or thought. The killer lines portion is meant to house those great lines you wouldn't find a person of average wit or sanity saying. Finally, the lines to make you smile are usually just quaint or humorous lines that serve as comic relief. Some of the dark humor overlaps with other categories, but for the most part I wanted to keep strictly humorous lines in this category. I tried to organize the quotes within groups and subgroups in interesting ways if they could at all be related to one another, but keep in mind that each and every quote here has immense value, if not innately, within the stories themselves. For example, at some point within the Profundities section, there are a couple of quotes grouped together pertaining to the theme of plague. When I juxtaposed them, I found them funny, but the quotes themselves in context are quite serious. I'm including links in the description to specific points in the video where the category changes take place. I understand that some may not be as interested in hearing how some of these authors take a stab at defining parts of human nature, while others may not like the comic relief contained in the dark text. Forgo what you wish, but be forewarned, there's a lot to be missed, regardless of which category you skip. In any case, though, enjoy the video. And by the way, I'm including some updates at the end of the video, so you may skip to that if you wish. Ever listen to someone you care a lot about passed through a meat grinder? I think I just did. Its skull was completely bald. It had no eyes, and the skin looked like it had been torn away from the lower half of its face, leaving the teeth and gums exposed. It looked up at me. Well, pointed its face in my general direction, anyway. The girl always had an overactive imagination, but this one little remark hit a little too close to home for me. I felt the unfamiliar prickle of goose flesh on my arm. Much of his slander was of a juvenile caliber. I've heard colts barely out of their diapers who could form more articulate pejoratives, so these were ignored. However, in one particular instance, he had managed to spew from his sewer of a mouth an insult of such unmitigated vulgarity that even those present besides my wife and I were stunned into utter silence. He had, with such effrontery, flung this insult toward my dear beloved, that snivelling, arrogant, pompous, self-entitled little bastard had the gall to dare insult my wife and bring her to tears, and in front of the equestrian elite no less. Rays of sun pierced my eyelids. A groggy feeling washed over me as I slowly sat up. I opened my eyes to the bright sun, not ready to meet its gaze. It happened long ago in the blazing ruins of Untitled Chapter, when deer hunted deer and compassion fled howling into the night. It was there that one of you showed me the truth. The smell I remember the clearest. It was the smell of magic sharp in the air, wrought of cruelty. The cloying ash, the smoke of burning hair, standing water gone putrid, all choked with the offal of battle was washed from far away. I remember the tortured sun, burying itself below the horizon, and how it scrawled its blood across the clouds. That horizon burned day and night. The war had far outstripped our capacity to fight it. Vast engines of destruction stalked the eventide, or slouched broken in the mud, reduced to tinder by sorcery even stronger than they. The very air curdled with the distant shrieks of beasts possessed. But in truth it was not the monsters we feared. As she spoke, her head had begun to lean to the right, but as it reached what should have been its anatomical limit, it nonetheless continued to bend. I don't really believe the rumors. No ponies were tortured and gutted down there, but it's dank and thick, like the walls are closing in, like there are eyes in every dark corner. I froze, fearing it was something dangerous. Then I saw the sad yellow eyes of a draft horse. His head was lowered and his ears sagged, as if he carried some kind of burden. It tugged at my heartstrings to see such a sad-looking creature. His dull gray coat was bloodied and matted. His long, raven-black mane was tangled and twisted. He flicked his ears weakly and looked up at me. His eyes are strange. Most likely one of the reasons he was dumped here, I thought. He did have strange eyes indeed. His left eye was a sickly yellow that almost seemed to glow. The right was pale blue, with red ringing the pupil. That damnable chill stole the warmth of the morning sun from my skin. My hands clenched and unclenched spastically, like dying spiders. Once she had finished, she took a seat in her large chair and stared at the two framed pictures that sat on her nightstand. The two unicorns were beaming at her, completely unaware of the horrific fates that awaited them. Fluttershy stared at the pictures, an inexplicable rage beginning to build within her. Their perfect smiles, their obliviousness to the world outside the frame, they were mocking her. They were laughing behind those smiles, at her, at the pain she was going through without them. She wouldn't take it from those two any longer. She flew at them like a Pegasus out of hell, sending the nightstand flying as she grabbed the two portraits and shoved the stand away. Soon, just like all the others, the recollection slowly dissolved, leaving her with a hollow feeling. Built long ago, it had long since been dwarfed by the buildings around it, and yet of all the things that remained in the city, it was the most recognizable. Bare steel still held the structure aloft, and while broken glass sparkled on the ground around its base, it was still intact and held much of its former glory. In the days after the disaster, seeing it shining amidst the smoldering ruins had given her hope, and she had gone there to see who had taken shelter in its metallic core. No one had. Who would believe the landmark destroyed in every film made about the city would be the one thing to survive the end of the world? I turn to face where he usually sleeps, and he is there, softly crying in his sleep again. When he is like this, it's best to let him be, if you have your best interests in mind. In that minuscule splinter of time, the land was ravaged from the bottom up. Not a single city was left unrazed, and not a single soul was left untainted. By this point, the opposing sides' strongholds were both nothing more than pathetic little shanty towns. Mass graves littered the landscape, silent places of solace for those of the fallen who were fortunate enough to have found their way back home. In this Equestria devastated by an apocalyptic war, a sovereign nation that had been a paragon of purity a few short years earlier, happiness was quickly becoming a myth. Here, just the word peace atrophied from disuse. Nightwatch jumped as a strange guttural noise came from somewhere deep in the forest, causing Hoplite to put a hoof to his mouth. "Quiet," he whispered in a hurried tone. "Don't attract any attention. We don't know what's in this forest, and I'm not too keen on finding out." Nightwatch gulped and gave a quick nod, his eyes shifting to and fro, looking for, and subsequently hoping not to find, the source of the noise. That familiar battle fear settled in my guts. What raged over the hill? Trolls? Golems? Against those we dared to take a chance, but they were brutes without magic, and there were things bred for war, far fouler than any troll. Things on wings of shadow, unclad in the raiment of the world. Things with furnace eyes. The last thing he wondered was if standing was the best way to greet the ground rushing toward him so rapidly. Twilight was her friend. Pinky trusted her friends, right? She wasn't afraid of them. And yet, she felt like her heart was drowning in pure terror, and she could see the same fear and horror reflected back at her in all the pink shapes, tensely jittering, but keeping their panicked eyes on the paint-covered wall. She could see the cold dread in all of them, the trepidation that came with their shared knowledge that, at most, only one of them was getting out of this alive. Even more disturbing than the smile were the thing's eyes. They were darker than the midnight sky, and they held two microscopic dots of white that were locked on his own eyes. Hoplite could feel the eyes of this thing burrowing their way into his retinas, and try as he might, there was no escaping this thing's petrifying glare. He felt his entire body lock into position, completely at the mercy of his enemy. It was then that Jib's prank returned to me, and thoughts of the cupcake killer strangled my imagination. For a moment she appeared, and I clutched the pillow for my life. That grim smile of blood-stained teeth, a look of sadistic glee in her pinprick eyes froze me in place. She had a butcher knife in her teeth, dripping crimson droplets down on her pale pink coat. I blinked, and she was gone, but the image stayed with me for far too long. Its face, The prospect of how its face could have gotten to its present state shocked and horrified Celestia beyond anything she had ever seen before. Dried blood coated the creature's horn and face, and if the terrifyingly large smile plastered on the creature gave any indication, it was ecstatic to see the ponies and dragon in front of it. "Rainbow!" Pinkie called up to her. "Are you all right?" That seemed to help. Rainbow suddenly stopped her unearthly cries and looked down at Pinkie, but when she did, her eyes went wide with horror and she scrambled away, as if terrified. Have you ever heard of a treant? Picture a tree, the largest tree you can imagine, only make it bigger. Give it arms, legs. Now picture it with the will to move, to destroy. The smallest ones, the first ones, they had deer wrapped up inside them, trapped inside, really. We could fight those, but the things coming our way, they were something else, something more. We could take trolls. With the deer, we might have taken a treant, just one. But in that hour, staggering under that loss, we didn't stand a chance. It was as if some pony wrested the breath from my body. She was standing just a few feet away, her icy eyes shimmering in the light of the reflecting snow, daggers dancing in fetid blue pools. Her smile was sanity-wrenching and twisted like the crook of a gnarled tree, a wrenching gash of fear. Centuries ago, an era of peace once reigned, born of Equestria's genesis. 'Twas a fall from grace so grandiose that it pulled all life along with it. A beautifully tragic story, truly. And funnily enough, it all started with a moment so tragically beautiful that things could only possibly get worse. It's probably just some nut trying to get in the news or make some kind of statement. No pony's actually going to attack Canterlot. It's got to be the best defended place in all of Equestria. Being a prodigy, I already knew the word, but this story made it resonate inside me, and it made me think about death and eternity and the evanescence of all things for the first time. Of course, these are poor thoughts for a child, even one as quick and precocious as I was, and Celestia tried hard, in that subtle, guiding way of hers, to make me forget about it, and I quickly did, distracted by the vastness of the world, and the learning aloud by that vastness, and my own untapped potential. But it lay dormant in my mind as a disease might rest in my veins, waiting to arise again and take me into its grip. Please hurry. I fear we are running out of time we never had in the first place. I wanted to forget about it, but I simply couldn't. I needed to perk up. It was my own birthday, of course. This was going to be a good day. Who was I trying to convince? If everything was all sound in my life, I wouldn't have to think about it. Or is the house my persuadee? No, I'm all right, just having trouble sleeping. Still. Yes, still, she answered with a cold gaze. Friends dying will have that effect on you. I'm sure that one of your friends would be more than happy to take you into their home. Her eyes shifted nervously to the 4 ponies, hoping one of them would prove her words to be true. I don't know who you think you are, but you're not a noble dragon. No pony needs your help, Spike. You're just a child with a hopeless cause, fueled by every pony's pity. He couldn't help but chuckle. She was right, wasn't she? And in the princess's mind, the pieces of the puzzle laid out before her started to connect, even though she would have given anything to leave it unfinished. I actually scare some ponies. They see me all hyper and happy and partying, and they think,
They think there must be something bad deep down inside of me. There's not really. I don't know why people can't just accept me for who I am, but sometimes.
There was no need to go on. Rainbow Dash was no scholar of Dr. Carl Colt's theories on equine archetypes, but although she couldn't put it into words, she understood the general idea. The evil clown, the sinister child, the menacing toy. She knew that there were ponies who wrote horror stories along these lines, though she never read any. They just weren't her thing. But she had never thought that such dark fantasies could hurt anyone in real life. But now she understood that they could. There was a conspiratorial shush from the other side of the door, and silence descended like a shroud. Death was a sacred boundary, and he felt sick for helping her cross it. Looking down at the vile creature, she desperately wanted to hate it, but at that moment, as she looked deep into its eyes, all she could see was an animal, an intelligent creature even, in pain.
Are you just going to sit there and weep? Come on, get up! Fight me!
I know the story well, and I know what will happen because this old universe does not change its ways, only its playing pieces. But while the universe loves its unchanging cycles and its silent canopy stands as it has always stood, this earth has changed so much. Time is wicked. These glimmering spires it has raised, these statues of myself, it has wrested away into nothingness. These bones it has quickened and then desiccated. She shivered. It was real. The shiver was real. The cold was real. Why was it so cold? She didn't know. I just figured that once the novelty of the shared experience had worn off, we really didn't have that much to talk about. Rarity had been the last one of her friends to even pretend to care for her. That had ended last year, when, after a stilted conversation over a bland lunch, she had screamed out the peppy pink pony to act her age. But knowing the derivative of binomials forward and backward, knowing every symbol in The Great Gatsby, but not understanding why anyone would kill for love. We'd kill for good grades and great futures. After all, that's the only thing we've been taught. No emotions were let out from us two stallions, having been brought up in the same style that the stallion was the rock for mares like Hope to cling to, as Sentry was being now toward her. We both silently agreed that there was no point in delaying the inevitable. That didn't mean that when they left I had to be a rock. I put the burning horizon behind me and slogged east, to search further out over a nearby dike. That was my excuse, anyway. Wasn't going to take long. Had my axe, but that wouldn't save me if a treant or a vine was slouching out there in the dark. Most I could have done then would be to scream and give the others a chance. But I needed this. Needed a moment. The grass other side of the dike was knee-high, black and rotting. I stopped there, out of sight in the darkness. Stopped and held Tung's knife hard in my fist, so hard the scabbard squelched in the rain. Let the pain wash over my shoulders and cut red-hot down my spine. Just let it hurt, and let myself cry. Let it overcome me where no one could see. The rain ate the tears. This was a battle of no regrets. There would be no turning back. Only one victor would stand high over the battlefield, and they would rewrite history in the blood of the fallen. If one wished to live, then one needed to pick the winner. Since then, she tried to find solace with her other friends, but they had changed in their own ways, and in dealing with their own problems, didn't have any time for her. The doctor told me it was a figment of my imagination. a hallucination. A phantom limb cut off, but though the ghost of a feeling still remains. The doctor tutted and prescribed me a different pill. I've lost count of how many pills I've tried. There was the yellow one, and the red, and the white capsule, and the green one. You know how the nurses are about these things. I'll be sure to talk to them. You should be able to leave here tomorrow. Spike laughed, relieved. You certainly know how to work the system, don't you, Emerald Strongbeat? I can't wait to get out of here. These ponies were not cruel or vindictive. They were farmers and artisans. They were good yet misguided ponies who sought to give me another chance at a better fate. He discovered rather quickly that he was extremely self-conscious of his missing limb, primarily because no pony ever looked at him in the eyes anymore. In the end, her compassion turned out to be a curse rather than a blessing. Why did ponies have to be so focused on preserving life at all costs? In which circumstances, not to speak of many others of a similar or even graver complexion, diverse apprehensions and imaginations were engendered in the minds of such as were left alive, inclining almost all of them to the same harsh resolution, to wit, to shun, and to abhor all contact with the sick and all that belonged to them, thinking thereby to make each his own health secure. I may love reading, but the second I put a quill on parchment and try to write, everything just turns to mush. It had been so much easier when your phone could guide your steps. Maps were terrible things. They couldn't tell you which direction you were facing, or what street you were on, especially now that many of the signs, which had once marked the way, had fallen. Besides, as much as she loved the bustle and crowds of downtown Ponyville, every pony occasionally needed to see the green grass and hear the birdsong of the countryside. For the call of the running tide is a wild call, and a clear call that may not be denied. I know that they all have their own lives to live, and I'm not blaming them for being busy. Heck, I can remember at least a dozen times when I was too wrapped up in something to be bothered by them. Well, isn't this just great? The day I decide to bury the hatchet is nowhere to be found. Khoroscha rolled his head away from her, closing his eyes. It wouldn't make any difference if you understood, he groaned. You've already decided that you hate me. As the diarchs molded to the savage life of leadership, moment by moment the purity within them died. It was a slow and painful process that began shortly after their ascension. The diarch of the day took to the limelight with grace and poise, and was beloved by the ponies. On the other end, the ponies viewed the diarch of the night as mysterious and dangerous, causing them to approach her with trepidation. As a result, she faded into the shadows, invisible in her own little realm of darkness and envy, in adversity only exacerbated by her counterpart's growing popularity. The brightest days always cast the darkest shadows, as it were. Pinkie Pie had never understood why someone would commit suicide. Life was so full of potential, for friends, and love, and laughter, and smiles, and surprises, and everything. What pain, what despair could ever overcome something so great and wonderful? She understood now. She was feeling it right this second. I can't die. I don't mean that I'm immortal. No, far from it. The pain I've caused every pony is far too much for me to simply take the easy way out. My shattered leg pierced through my skin when I threw myself from the canter horn. I spent months enchanting a blade to pierce my heart, only to find that I healed too fast to be killed by such
Mundane means, after removing the blade from my flesh, I did not even bear a mark of my attempt. I have led armies, and fought with reckless abandon no pony could match. I have challenged the most ancient and dangerous dragons. I have bathed in their flames, and yet I remain unscathed.
They said they didn't blame me for what happened, and I could see in their eyes that it was true. But the pain of the loss, combined with the fact that Rarity's death was without a doubt my fault, was too much to bear. Someone else would love them. Someone else would take better care of them.
You're lucky they haven't been taken away yet. 40 years old and you still act like a child. You should just go ahead.
Pinky nodded to herself. That voice was making more and more sense lately. In my desperation, I took the guise of a demon so that Celestia would kill me. Everything I have ever done, she has done better. It was fitting that she should succeed in ending my life. But no! A millennia I wept on the moon, forgotten and with only my longing for death to accompany me. Nightmare Moon was no more successful than I was. I returned with violence in my heart. I would show her that imprisonment had done nothing, that my death was the only answer. She used your sister and her friends against me. They weakened me until I was but a helpless foal, so that I could return to Canterlot under my sister's watchful eye. She was meant to be my escape, but now she is the warden to my prison. She shows me the wonders of this new age, how much better off the world has been without me.
Applejack said that Rainbow didn't blame me, that she understood what I was going through. Every pony in Ponyville still couldn't believe that Rarity was gone, and that they missed me, too. You know what? I honestly think that they were telling the truth. I really do believe that they miss me, and that's what makes it all the more painful to bear. They don't love me. They love what I used to be. They miss the old Twilight Sparkle.
Likewise displeaseth me both life and death, and my delight is causer of this strife. How reassuring the illusion of normalcy is in our lives.
I could have held his hoof, told him all those things I should have told him, and he would have died with a friendly face watching over him. Not some doctor he's never met. Can you even understand what that means?
He would still be dead. We tried. Some things just don't heal right. Others don't heal at all. You're a plague, you're vermin. You come here and you attack us for no reason. Every pony would be better off if you were all dead. I should just leave you here to rot. Following which prescription, a multitude of men and women, negligent of all but themselves, deserted their city, their houses, their estate, their kinsfolk, and their goods, and went into voluntary exile, or migrated to the country parts, as if God, in visiting men with this pestilence in requital of their iniquities, would not pursue them with his wrath wherever they might be, but intended the destruction of such alone as remained within the circuit of the walls of the city, or deeming perchance that it was now time for all to flee from it, and that its last hour was come. Celestia herself wasn't convinced with this theory, but it made the most sense to her, and if she was wrong, well, there wouldn't be a chance to regret anything. Anyway, I was up, clicking around, looking for a good creepypasta I hadn't read before, really getting myself freaked out. You know the feeling, I'm sure. You like the feeling. That's the problem. How she was going to get them to believe a killing spree was happening was anyone's guess. They'd probably think it was just a prank call. I heard laughter. I knew it was Jib on the other side of the door, but I swear, it sounded like it was coming from the bottom of the stairs, and an impossibly sweet scent, that had to be my imagination, caressed the edges of my consciousness. I banged on the door, and my screams deafened me to the laughter. But what was that the sound of my hoof echoing into the basement? Or some pony climbing the steps of the cellar behind me? They watched him through the windows. They knew. They knew he could see them, and they didn't like it. And now, I was pretty sure that they knew that I could see them too. So marvelous sounds that which I have now to relate, that had not many, and I among them, observed it with their own eyes, I had hardly dared to credit it, much less to set it down in writing, though I had had it from the lips of a credible witness. Molly is a doll. She can't walk, she can't talk, and there's nothing to be scared of. Audrey looked uneasily at Molly. The longer she stared, the more Molly's expression looked malicious. The idea of turning the system off came to my head, but something kept me from doing so. I couldn't bear to silence Luigi and his somber wailing. Even though the well-being of a virtual character's life has no possible effect on my own, I was begging for the system to cease the screaming and shut itself off, and end this torment. But my past experience with this game in the last 24 hours struck me with grueling skepticism. I knew for damn sure that this wasn't anything planned, hacked, or glitched in any possible way. The game, for as scary as it sounds, was testing me. I'm guessing you believe in a higher power. Am I right? Of course I am. When have I ever been wrong? But you know what my job is? I guess you can say that I work for your God. But you can also say that I work for his enemy. You know, Satan. Rarity's dead, and I'm still here. She might be gone, but at least I can fix the other problem. I just have to figure out the best possible way to kill myself in an empty, padded room. I wanted a calm and restful hearth's warming. I got an assassination job instead. Some ponies may call me insane. Some may think of my actions as an abomination against nature, against life itself, perhaps. Well, they haven't experienced the twisting road of horror that led to this decision. Life isn't fair, it seems, so I'm simply evening out the odds a little. Since we, as humans, have made survival easier to achieve, well, it makes everyone lose their instinct to kill.
I've learned that if I kill a pony, then I should separate myself from my friends and go insane.
Cowards never made for good meals. Death doesn't care if you don't want to die, and neither do I. Well, Mr. Broadsword, as you should already see, I'm a highly trained assassin, whose mission here is to find and kill you, specifically. Now, there are two ways we can do this. One, you can surrender to me, and because it's the holidays, I'll make your death quick and painless. Option 2, you try to fight back against the inevitable, and make this harder on both of us, I said smugly. What's your choice?
Come join me, Spike. Insanity, not ignorance, is bliss. You just need to give in to the madness.
Why don't we get the others? Dash and Fluttershy both shook their heads in unison as they moved to stand next to one another and approach Pinky slowly. It's not time for them yet. You're close, Pinky. So weary? Just give up. Drop into your grave. Dash gave a shaky smile and swallowed with tears staining the corners of her eyes. Don't make it hard like I did. Go easy. We'll all play on the other side.
I knew Celestia would send someone to find me, but I was so hoping that it would be my friends. Instead, I get you. You poor, unfortunate pony.
Hoplite gulped, and as the connection between his mission and what the creature had just said made itself clear, he spoke.
Twilight Sparkle?
Here I am, in the flesh. But to be fair, my flesh has seen better days. If any pony could understand, I was hoping it would be you, Celestia.
There is nothing to understand here, Twilight. You are a danger to yourself and to others, and you will receive the help whether you want it or not.
Ha! Ha! Oh, please! Don't tell me you've never had to deal with death before. Over 1,000 years of life, over 1,000 years of death. With such a long lifespan, I'm sure you've taken a life before.
Celestia was obviously distressed by the implication, and she slowly backed away from the trapped unicorn.
Do you feel the regret? The shame? The fleeting hope that you could have done something different?
The Princess of the Sun couldn't believe that her best and brightest pupil was now dissecting her life in such a way.
You're the only one who could possibly understand what it's like taking the life of another. After all, you're the one who banished Luna!
Now, is that any way to greet your brother? Celestia snorted.
What? Luna and yourself call each other sister, despite your apparent lack of relation. Surely I deserve to be called brother just as much.
She'd always mock the idiots who ran up the stairs instead of out the door, the ones who insisted on splitting up, and the ones who couldn't seem to even breathe quietly. All the while, she'd be munching on popcorn and talking about realistic blood splatters.
I can see that you are presently occupied, my good prince. I'll see if Hoity-Toity can confirm or deny my suspicions. If any and I can tell one wine from another, surely his, that overrated, pompous old wind bag, couldn't tell de Grave from common apple cider. I hear that his taste of the finer things is a match even to your own. Twilight, Applejack, Spike, and we Crusaders were hiking, and then a dragon attacked us, but Spike pushed Applejack out of the way and was grabbed by the dragon. The dragon grabbed him in a talon and dropped him into the ghastly gorge. Twilight stared at the energetic filly blankly. What the hay was she going on about? And what was so hard about speaking clearly when you talk to other ponies? Did she take lessons from Pinkie Pie? A peek at the lower floor showed broken bottles, abandoned plastic glasses, and a mess of liquids, stepped on junk food, and assorted stuff. If there wasn't a large puddle of blood smack in the middle of the large entrance room, she'd have thought the party a success. As it was, Mike's mom was going to have a fit. After I finished up all the trivial housework, I was left with nothing productive to do. So I did what any unamused gaming fanatic would do. I settled down inside my room and looked at my large library of games. Luna stifled a sigh as she looked around the gilded room. Family dinners were at least predictable. Cadence and Shining Armor would sneak kisses like an unmarried couple half their age, while Blue Blood would provide an endless stream of the most inane prattle Canterlot had to offer, and Celestia would pretend to hang on to his every word. The food would be too good, the portions too small, the wine too weak, and despite the October chill, the room would still manage to be unbearably stuffy.
The first course was set on the table, a few leaves and some overly expensive dressing masquerading as a salad.
What did you expect? It was easy. They didn't need bombs or explosives. Once someone figured it out, everyone with a grudge against the world could make it pay. You don't need many madmen for the whole planet to burn. Did we ever find out who first discovered they could make it rain fire instead of chocolate milk? Discord asked, tilting his head.
Pip, stop pulling on your sister's tail. I can't help it. It's so poofy, he replied, trying once again to touch his sister's tail. 2 Space Ogun. It looked as though this card was indeed for me, but there must have been a problem with the postmaster's printer. The L that is supposed to start the entirety of my own name wasn't there.
I wonder if what they say is true. If you kill yourself, do you not get to go to Elysium like they say? What if Nanopie was right, and suicides become civil servants?
And even Fluttershy was away from home tending to her animals. Come to think of it, does she even have a job?
'Tis a pity thy magic cannot create food that grants sustenance, else my sister would need not venture into the city. Yes, well, if my magic was capable of such things, we would have a lot less trouble, Discord said, waving her off.
Celestia glanced back and forth between the growth tubes, peering past the tiny ponies suspended within.
Luna, where is father? He went outside. He wished to get some fresh air. I thought it was to avoid having to listen to your butchery of the English language for a moment longer, Discord grinned. Speaking of which, while I was wandering around the city, I got a phone call. It was the 16th century. They want your voice back. I told them they had the wrong number, but they insisted I pass it along.
Luna sniffed.
'Tis only proper for we who remain to speak in a dignified manner.
Hello again. So, as I have let on in a few blog posts and comments, my output is now stymied due to the occupations entailed with college. However, lately I have had some time to get this project done. I had intended to get this done before I left, but that was not possible. However, here it is. My next projects are pretty much already determined. I have 2 requests, one from Shadow Law and another from Shadow Kirby, which I am now going to investigate. All things going to plan, I'll request permission from those authors and be able to go through with the audio readings for the related stories. After that, things will pretty much be up in the air. I don't yet have enough questions, or responses for that matter, to do my Q&A session. I have one fiction that I'm kind of eyeing up because it involves a certain musical idol of mine, but that doesn't mean I'll necessarily do that either. In any case, I'm still in action, albeit slowed action. A big thanks to all of you who made it this far. I want to take this channel places with the readings I do. I'm a little bit intimidated, though, by what I see from other readers I've encountered. They can do their own custom artwork and music for their own videos, and that's great. I cannot. What I can try to give you is quality readings of quality fictions. I began looking up my own video analytics YouTube provides me, and it's a little disheartening. Across all of my videos, I lose about 50% of my viewers within the first 30 seconds of the video, and overall, only about 17% of those who view my videos actually make it all the way through, and that's for all my videos in general. I want to give a shout out to all of you 17%ers out there. So far, my channel has not accrued any haters, and for that I am thankful. I am looking forward to serving you all in the future. I am at 99 subscribers now. At the time I made this script, I had actually 97 subscribers, and I was going to make some sort of joke about it being a prime number, but Yeah. Not a prime number. But anyway, I'm immensely grateful to you all for your support, as always. By the by, if you have any comments on the quotes that I chose for this video, please feel free to state them. I love to hear from you guys, and I know that not every quote speaks to everybody. In any case, happy listening, friends.